In 1927, a commercial pilot flying over the Peruvian desert noticed something that made his blood run cold. Lines. Massive lines carved into the earth. Geometric shapes. Animal figures, hundreds of feet long. But here's what stopped him. These designs were mathematically perfect, and they could only be seen from the sky. The problem? They were created over 2,000 years ago, centuries before humans ever achieved flight.
What if ancient civilizations across 4 continents with no contact at all did the exact same impossible thing? What if they spent generations building messages that could only be read from the sky? And what if the answer to why is something modern archaeology refuses to say out loud?
The Nazca Lines cover nearly 200 square miles of Peruvian desert. Created between 500 BCE and 500 CE, they include over 300 geometric designs and 70 animal figures. The scale is staggering. The hummingbird, 305 feet long. The spider, 150 feet across. The monkey, 360 feet wide. Some lines run perfectly straight for 30 miles. Conventional archaeology tells us these were ceremonial walkways, that the Nazca people walked these paths as part of religious rituals. But here's the problem. If you're standing on the ground at Nazca, you see rocks, brown dirt, random lines going in different directions. The famous hummingbird? From ground level, it's incomprehensible. You'd need to walk for hours, taking precise measurements just to understand you're standing on its wing. The designs only reveal their true form from 600 to 1,000 feet in the air, from exactly the altitude where a small aircraft flies today.
So conventional archaeology wants us to believe ancient people spent decades creating enormous artworks they could never actually see, that they calculated perfect proportions and mathematical precision for images that would be meaningless to them. Does that make sense? Or is there another explanation we're not supposed to consider?
If Nazca were the only site like this, we could call it an anomaly, but it's not. This same impossible engineering appears on every inhabited continent. Different cultures, different time periods, zero contact between them, yet they all made the same choice. The White Horse of Uffington, England, created around 1000 BCE, 3,000 years ago. 374 feet long, only recognizable from the air, predates the Roman invasion of Britain. The local population maintained this figure for 3 millennia, maintained something they couldn't see. The Atacama giant, Chile, 390 feet tall, created between 1000 and 1400 CE, the largest human figure ever etched into the earth. From the ground, a jumble of lines on a hillside. From the air, a being looking up at the sky. The steppe geoglyphs, Kazakhstan. In 2015, archaeologists using Google Earth discovered over 50 massive earthworks that had gone completely unnoticed. Why? Because they're only visible from space. Some are 1,300 feet across, and they date to 8,000 years ago, Neolithic period. People who supposedly hadn't developed advanced agriculture yet. But somehow, they had mathematical precision, geometric knowledge, surveying capabilities, and the organization to move thousands of tons of earth, for images only visible from an aerial view they'd never experience. Serpent Mound, Ohio, 1,348 feet long, one of the largest effigy mounds in the world. Created by Native Americans between 1,000 and 3,000 years ago.
Different continents, different millennia, different cultures with absolutely zero contact. Yet they all decided, we need to make something massive, something that only makes sense if you're looking down from above. Why would cultures with no concept of flight, separated by oceans and centuries, all independently decide to create messages for aerial viewers? Unless they weren't inventing this idea, they were remembering something.
There is an ancient explanation for these sky-facing designs. It's just not one conventional archaeology wants to acknowledge. The Sumerians, one of humanity's first advanced civilizations, left extensive records of beings they called the Anunnaki. The word literally translates to those who from heaven to earth came. According to their texts, these weren't gods in the supernatural sense. They were physical beings who descended from the sky. The Sumerians described these beings arriving from above, teaching advanced knowledge, creating humans through intervention, and eventually departing, but promising to return. And this exact narrative appears in every ancient culture that created these geoglyphs. The Greeks wrote about gods who descended from Olympus. Hindu texts describe flying vehicles called vimanas. The Book of Enoch details watchers who came down from heaven. Genesis describes the sons of God who came to earth. Different names, different languages, same story.
Is it possible these geoglyphs weren't religious art at all? What if they were landing markers, communication symbols, or messages saying, "We're here, we remember, we're watching the sky for your return"?
Even setting aside who they were communicating with, the mathematics alone are unexplainable. Creating a geoglyph that maintains perfect proportions when viewed from altitude requires advanced mathematics, scaling calculations, geometric precision, proportional accuracy across massive distances. It requires surveying technology, the ability to maintain straight lines over miles, precise angle measurements, elevation calculations. And it requires organizational capability, coordinated labor forces, resource management, multi-generational planning. Modern engineers have tried to replicate Nazca Lines using period-appropriate tools. The result? It's theoretically possible if you have a detailed aerial photograph to work from, modern surveying equipment to verify accuracy, and GPS coordinates to maintain precision. The ancient Nazca people had none of these things, yet their lines are accurate to within inches over miles of distance. Conventional archaeology's explanation? They use string lines and wooden stakes. Over 30-mile stretches, through valleys and hills, maintaining perfect straightness, for designs they couldn't see. Multiple ancient texts describe beings teaching humanity. The Sumerian Apkallu, 7 sages who brought civilization. The Egyptian Thoth, god of mathematics and geometry. The Mayan Kukulkan, who taught astronomy and architecture. What if the precision wasn't human at all? What if it was taught?
I'm not saying it's impossible that humans did this alone. I'm saying we should at least consider they might have had guidance, and that possibility leads to something bigger.
So let's put this together. Ancient cultures across the globe, with zero contact, created massive ground markings visible only from the air. They did this with mathematical precision that challenges our understanding of their capabilities. They left written records describing physical beings who came from the sky and taught them advanced knowledge. And they maintained these sites for millennia, kept them pristine, as if waiting for someone to return and see them. What if the Nazca Lines, the Uffington Horse, the Atacama Giant, the Kazakhstan geoglyphs, and Serpent Mound aren't separate mysteries at all? What if they're all part of the same story? A story about beings who visited Earth, who taught humanity, who departed, and who left behind cultures that spent thousands of years doing the only thing they could think to do: make messages, point them at the sky, and hope someone was still watching.
Different cultures, different languages, different continents, and even different centuries, but the same story. In my work, I explore how all the world's major religions are actually telling fragments of the same narrative. The Elohim in the Bible, the Anunnaki of Sumer, the Watchers of Enoch, and even the Devas of the Hindu tradition. Not different gods, the same beings, filtered through human language and culture. And these geoglyphs, they might be the oldest evidence we have. Not words that can be mistranslated, not stories that can be embellished, just stone, earth, and a message carved so large that the only way to read it is to look down from the heavens. The question isn't whether ancient people created these markings. They did. The evidence is undeniable. The question is why? Why would cultures who couldn't fly spend generations building messages for aerial viewers unless they knew, they remembered, that someone was watching? If this pattern fascinates you, subscribe. We're going deeper.